Hi, I'm Hui Sue, and you're here at Sue Crafty, and today we're going to be talking about alcohol markers. Stampin' Up! Has a line called Stampin' Blends, and these markers are actually available in lighter shade and a darker shade of each color. And what this does is it allows your images to be more dimensional because they're so solvent based. They actually blend very well together, and it creates gradients in your images. And also because they're solvent based, they don't deform your paper, which is great. Today we're going to be making a card. And in this card, I'm actually coloring in these flowers. And these flowers are actually part of the Love You Always Designer Series paper. And we're just going to use that. So I guess one of the things I wanted to mention about these markers is there actually are two tips. So I really like how it has like this really nice tip here that feels like a brush when you draw with it. And then there's also the other end that is more like a marker. And so you can see that this end it will do more finer areas if you want to have more control over where your color goes. And the other nice feature about this marker is that you can tell which side is which because they indicate it on the outside of the marker. And then also the marker itself is rectangular, so it doesn't roll off your surface, which is really nice. So really like that about them. But anyway, let's go ahead and start working on this card. The card we're making is Valentine theme for the month of February. We're going to be using the Designer Series paper from the mini catalog, January to June mini catalog, and it's from a collection called Love You Always. And they have a lot of very lovely black and white and pastel-y colors, I guess you would say. So we're going to be looking at this black and white line. All these cardstock are actually double-sided. One side is geometric designed, and the other side have a floral design in them. And each one is a little bit different from the other. And what's great about this is it gives you endless possibilities for decorating your card. And I'm actually going to be using one of these floral designs to decorate our card, and we're going to be coloring it with our alcohol marker. They also have this really nice foil sheened card that you can use. Very nice. It's very elegant. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on coloring it with the RAZZLEBERRY Stampin' Blends. And the Stampin' Blends have a lighter shade and a darker shade of each color. I like to use the brush one because I just like the feel of it a little better. Everybody has their own little preference. And I started out coloring towards the center first with a darker shade. And then I go to the lighter shade marker. And what's nice about this is that right where the two colors come together, I brush over it again with a lighter shade, and it moistens the paper, and it allows the darks to blend into the light and the light to blend into the dark. And if you notice, I actually work from the outside in. So I work the lighter color from the outside into the darker color, and then the darker color gets blended. And you might also notice that I actually work, one or two petals at a time. What I notice that this works best for getting the blends to go through and have a really nice multi-dimensional effect to it. So yeah, you don't really have to be a meticulous artist. That's what's really great about these blends. And then for the leaves, I'm actually just going to color it with one marker. It's Old Olive Light. And even with just one marker, you can kind of see that it gives it a nice little watercolor effect. So these are the elements that we're going to be using. We're going to be using an embossed cardstock. We're going to be using our 2 strips of designer paper and also our colored designer paper flower. And then I also have a black heart that's cut out from cardstock and a vellum heart, a gold vellum heart. And the annual catalog does have hearts as well as the mini catalog. They both have heart dies if that's something that you're looking for. I decided to put more leaves onto our card. So we're going to look at this Wild Rose stamp set and die set from the annual catalog. What's nice about the stamp set is that it allows you to create different layers for the rose. And so it gives it a lot of dimension. In this case, we're not going to be using the stamp set for making roses, but we're actually going to be using the dies for the leaves. That way it'll create a little bit more full look to our card. So we're going to use 3 dies, and we're going to be using one of the stamps for the leaves. So I'm using a Stamparatus. I love the Stamparatus. The Stamparatus is what brought me back to paper crafting, actually. It's great because you can position your stamp exactly where you want it to be on your cardstock, and it kind of stays there. And then if you happen to accidentally not put enough ink on your stamp and you need to restamp the same image on the same spot, it is not a problem. It just goes right back in the same spot. And so the other thing that's great about it is I don't have to change anything, and I just rotate my paper and I can get multiple stamps of the same image. And this is just a great way to make multiple stamps, which is what I'm doing, because we're going to be needing a few leaves here. So after this one, we're going to go ahead to the die machine, and we're going to cut out these leaves using our dies. See that? It's great. Great, isn't it? I'm just like so over trying to get the stamps to line up with one another. Here we are. We're going to be cutting these out. I actually, if you notice, I use some blue tape, or you can use some low tack positioning tape too. So this helps hold the die in place, and then that way it doesn't move while you're cutting it, which is great. Now, if you don't have a die cutter and you don't have dies, you can always use a pair of scissors and you can cut them out. I've done that. I just happen to have the dies for these leaves, and it's great for when I need to make a lot of cuts. It just speeds it through really, really nicely, so I like that. We're going to go ahead to the other dies now. This one we're going to be using green cardstock. This will give it a nice contrast against the white leaves. And these dies are actually, they cut very fine. I just love it because the leaves that comes out are very fine. But part of the deal with it being fine is that you have to have a sharp pointed tool to be able to punch out all the loose pieces that needs to come out. And I know Stampin' Up! Has a tool called a pick tool, which has a pointed tip that you can use to punch out the loose pieces that needs to come out. But I happen to have this little thing called, I don't even know what it's called, but it comes with my silhouette, so I'm just using it. Alright, so now let's go ahead and take a look at our card and range things to see how we want our cards to look. I'm going to look at putting the designer paper on the left and the polka dot on the right. We have a strip that's at 1/2 inch, which is the flower one, and then we have a strip that's 1/4 inch. We have our flower that we colored. We have our black heart that's going to go in the background, and then we have all of our nice leaves, and then we also have our vellum heart. I know that Stampin' Up! Also has dies in their catalogs, the annual catalog, as well as their mini catalogs. So I'm also looking at the orientation going horizontally to see which way I like my card to go. And when you make your card, you can do the same thing. You can decide. And I don't know, what do you think? Horizontal, vertical? I think I decided to go vertical. And I'm going to put my polka dot card against the open edge of my card, and I'm going to use a writing instrument to mark the edge. So this is the edge where my designer series strips are going to be covering. That's my reference point. So the first piece I'm going to put on is actually the 1/2 inch one, and it's actually not going to cover the line. It's going to reveal about 1/8 of an inch. So that means it's going to go 1/8 of an inch towards the fold of the card. So for adhesive, if you have a glue stick, you can use a glue stick. If you have what I have, which is an adhesive gun, you're welcome to use that. If you have the small adhesive runner, I believe that's what it's called, you can use that as well. When the adhesive goes over the edge a little bit, I just use my fingers and I push it towards the paper. That way I don't have a sticky mess. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm pushing the adhesive into the paper. And now we got that on, and we're going to get the 1/4 inch. And this one, I'm actually going to cover the line now just by a tad. If you want to be specific, I would probably say about 1/16 of an inch is what I'm doing. And then that way, when the polka dot card comes on, it'll cover that last layer. So I'm going to put adhesive along the perimeter of where the polka dot card is going to be. If you have, again, a glue stick, that would work. I don't really bother putting adhesive in the middle because I don't need it. So I position it to line up with the edge of the card right at the corner, and then I pivot it until it lines up with an edge. And then once that's done, that's when I press it down and make sure it sticks. So now we're going to arrange. We're going to start working on gluing the back pieces first. So I'm using my flower as a reference point, and then I'm going to try to figure out where my hearts are going to be. We're going to start with the black heart. I'm going to put adhesive on the back of it. It's a nice large surface area, so I think it's going to be fine with adhesive that I'm using to adhere to the polka dot surface. As for the vellum, I'm going to use a glue dot because the glue is going to show through and the glue dot is just a little bit cleaner, and I can hide it behind the flower. So I make sure I put it in a spot that's not going to be visible. And then we're going to go and arrange the leaves that goes behind the flower and put it over the hearts. With these leaves, I'm going to be using glue dots. They're just more intricately cut, and you have uneven surfaces, and you have the vellum, so it's just easier to use glue dots to adhere to the surfaces. For the green leaves, because they're more intricately cut and they're finer, I'm going to go ahead and use a glue stick to apply adhesive on it. Now, if you happen to have a fine-tipped glue pen, that would work really well as well. Now we're going to figure out where to put the leaves that goes vertically on the left-hand side. And with this one, because the surface is pretty flat behind it, I'm going to go ahead and use a glue stick to adhere that. And again, the same glue stick for adhering the green leaf right over it. And then finally, with the last set of leaves, I'm going to arrange it. And I kind of like it overhanging over the edge of the card. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I can always cut the excess out. And again, because I'm going on a polka dot surface, I'm going to just use glue dots, which works great. Always use something as a reference point, so the flower is great for doing that. And this is going to be our last leaf. I'm getting sticky fingers, so it might be useful to have maybe a little wet paper towel on hand to wipe your fingers if needed. For these flowers, I'm going to be using mounting adhesive on top of it so that it can give it some more dimension. I happen to have this roll from Forever that I'm using. If you happen to need some, Stampin' Up! Does sell dimensionals, and they are pre-cut into little hexagons. So all you have to do is lift it and stick it on wherever you need to put them. And they're a little bit more squishy than the one that I have. So it goes through the postal service sorting machines a little bit better. But there you have it. I'm going to go ahead and cut the excess leaf. If you have any questions, check my website at www.suecrafty.com. All the materials are going to be listed in the description below, so if you're interested, you can go ahead and click on them. It comes out pretty nicely, and then I also made an alternative one using another set from the designer series. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you again.